Hello, hello, welcome. Thank you so much. I know you had a lot of AI options. And I'm here today to talk to you about how to make AI more human. That's my specialty, is adding that personalization layer and the human behind all of this. And before we get into any of the how-tos, what not to do's, I promise you're gonna walk out of here with a ton of really specific ideas and actionable insights. But I think we need to talk about one of the prevailing conversations that keeps happening around AI that I think it's stopping us from being as effective as we can and taking advantage of this technology. Who here has read at least one article in the last 6 months that suggests that your job, that HR or recruiting, is going to be replaced by AI at some point? Raise your hand. If your hand's not up, I know you're not paying attention. I'm sorry, I swear to you, I think I've read like 900 articles about this at this point, like a very significant number. And I gotta tell you, every time I read one of these articles, I have two thoughts. The first is that I don't think these people know much about AI. Because if you've ever gotten into a fight with a chatbot, you know how smart that technology is. It's not, right? It barely understands what you're asking. And frankly, if you've ever survived benefits season, you know the kinds of questions we get asked are not going to be something you code into a machine. And the second thing that I keep thinking is that these people very clearly know nothing about HR or recruiting. Because if they did, they would know that we work in a highly nuanced industry. And all of the things we do are pretty complicated and unique based on your industry, your level, the regulations that guide what you do. And they also don't admit to the universal truth. And it's that hiring is really hard. But the reason hiring is hard is because we work with one of the most unpredictable variables in the whole world: people. And if you know anything about AI, you know what AI is really good at? Predictable things. Yes or no questions. And to me, people are anything but. I've done this long enough to know. They always surprise me a little bit, even when I think I got it, and I've answered all the questions, all of a sudden, out of right field, here they come. But the other thing, the thing that I want us to all think about and remember, has nothing to do with data or algorithms or predictability or any of that. And it's the fact that looking for a job, it doesn't come easily. When you're at the point in your career that all of you are at, you don't wake up one morning and decide to quit your job. You've got too much on the line. You've got benefits. You work with a team you love. You got a nice commute. There are a million reasons why we stay, but a lot of bad things have to happen before we admit that we have to go. A lot. You know, I think about that moment when you open up the internet and you type in a job title. I'm not a very religious person, but I think of it like confession. Because what it is a confession that something's wrong in your life and that you're willing to change everything. Because that's what it means when you take a new job. You're willing to change every single thing, down to the computer you touch, the people you talk to, the doctors you see, the benefits that are available for your family. It is not a small choice. And I know that to be true because I've been there before. And based on some of the looks on your faces, you have too. And the thing that we forget when we talk about some machine replacing you is the fact that when people make life-altering decisions, they need people. I'm not making some big leap because the robot said this might be better for me. This world is hard and harsh. And frankly, I think it takes a lot to convince someone to make a big change if they don't know it's going to be better for them. And when someone makes a life-altering decision, humans need humans. And that's why I didn't build this presentation with a bunch of listing all the tools you could possibly use, because I think the blend is where the power lies. It's how we empower the tool with our mind and what we know about people. It's how we show up and create access to a human behind the machine that's going to make the difference. And that if we're fully using these tools to all of their potential, it's because we figured out the parts that need to stay human and the parts that we can optimize with technology. And that's what you're going to learn at the end of today's presentation. But ultimately, there's one thing that no matter if you take nothing away from this conversation, you must hear me on this. If you're looking to implement great technology, your goal has to be about results, not speed. Faster was never the problem. Shaving one day off of some made-up time-to-fill metric does not matter if you make people feel like they don't matter because you use some generic template that called them your name, right? Because here's the reality is that if you make people feel like they don't matter on day one, they surely aren't going to believe you on day 100. And you've got a bigger hill to climb in a world that will make a lot of people feel like they don't matter by default. If you are implementing technology, it should be because there's a result in mind, not just speed. That's what I want to teach you how to get today. Not just faster, but the results that you want, the results that matter for you to build a highly engaged, talented team that actually stays. That is what we're going to figure out by the end of this hour. So like my very kind introduction said, my name is Kat Kibben, and I am an inclusive hiring expert that specializes in job postings. I spent the last 6 years of my career focused on learning how to remove barriers of entry that have existed for all of history. I am very lucky to spend each of my days teaching teams how to do this, whether it's through conversations like this, team trainings, workshops where we actually do work, I know, crazy, and writing. Every week, I'm writing and researching a new topic so that I can open our eyes, but even more than that, I'm opening your heart to how we do better for each other, how we show up, how we make people know that we care. And something you're going to notice on this screen that's a little bit different than most of the presenters you'll see at this conference is my personal email address. I recognize a couple of faces in here, and they will tell you personally that if you send me a message, if you need help, I will respond. I will help. I will work through it with you, whether we have a contract, a proposal, and all of that or not, because I believe in making our industry better no matter what. And better means more human, not just more technology. And if you were writing down that email, don't worry, it's on this one too. You're probably at the E, that's 3 number ears, like the ones on your head, media, and it's named after 2 dogs with 4 ears. I'll tell you that story some other time. This is our agenda today. I want to start by actually looking back a little bit because people think AI is like new to us, and you've had AI in your pocket for a hot minute. Next, I want to talk about how we stand out, because the reality is that as we create a higher volume of messages and technology, it's harder than ever to get people's attention, and we need to be really thoughtful about that as we're looking at different ways to be human and make connections in a world that's pretty noisy. And finally, we are going to get very practical. I found some research that prioritized what recruiters most want to automate. We're going to talk about the opportunities, the ethical considerations that you need to think about, and I'm going to give you things that you can do with zero budget. You do not need $1 million and 12 tools to do what I'm going to teach you today, because again, I fundamentally believe that we need to cross through these barriers, and budget most certainly is not going to be one of them. All right? So, the history of artificial intelligence. So whenever people are like, I don't really use AI, I'm like, do you have a phone? Right? You have Siri in your pocket. You've used a little bit of AI. That's the kind of edge of AI. And the way that I've started to think about it is that because AI is just an aggregator of all the information that already exists on the internet, no new ideas here, guys. This is the reality, is that it's basically like Google search, except we're not given options, we're given answers. You ask one question and you get one answer. And that makes me worried. It scares me a lot, actually. And here's why. You see, I don't want to judge, but looking around this room, most of us didn't have cell phones our whole lives. No offense, I got a little sparkle too, okay? And in our lives, when we had one question, there were many different answers. I don't know about you, but there were many times in my life where I went to my grandmother and I would ask a question and she'd be like, go to the library. Go get a book. I'm not answering this for you. Like, I don't know why penguins pick up pebbles. Like, girl, get your book. Okay? And when I went to those places to learn, I was given so many answers I never even imagined, and answers to questions I never even had. And that is fuel for creativity, for thinking about things in maybe ways that you had never done them before. And then we were given the internet. And again, I could ask questions and I was given many, many different answers. And I could pick which answer was most aligned with my question, because let's be real, we don't always get the question right. You know, when you have to like switch around the words and you're like, no, that's weird. No, that's not what I meant. Right? But now we have this informational and generational divide. And no, I'm not going to beat up on Gen Z right now. It's easy, but I'm not going to do it. And the reason I bring that up is because we have this new generation of kids who asked one question and they got one answer. And the reality is that AI doesn't always tell the truth. AI is the aggregate of all the good intel and the bad intel. And that's a lot of information, and it makes me a little worried. Because, like, I really love the idea of one answer when I go on Netflix and I watch a movie and then it's like, I think you'll like this. And I'm like, yes. I love that. Yes, and I can sit there and binge watch all of these shows and they are on point, right? That's what I'm going to be doing after this conference. I bet y'all are too. There's some introverts here, right? Who here has ever been like, I think my phone's listening, right? Like, because I'll be having a conversation with my girlfriend about like dog backpacks, and then the next morning, both of us open up Instagram, and they're like, dogs in a backpack. And I'm like, did you Google something last night? Like, what did you? Starting to get paranoid about like, what are you searching? Right? And I love that because it's bringing the answers to me. That's what AI is so good for, right? I need this, you give me the thing. That is so great. You just saved me a lot of time and energy carrying my dog around the park when they give up on our walk. Success. But see, that becomes a lot more complicated when you're making hiring decisions. And right now, we're in the Wild West of AI. It is a very unregulated industry still in the United States. But all of the regulation that has happened is singularly around the decision point. It's the decision to move someone on into an interview. It's the decision that they should move from the interview to the next interview. It's the decision to hire. And every single time you let the machine make that decision, you just opened that door wide up for some liability. Because you know what? In those really thick contracts those technology companies make you sign, they sign away all responsibility for the decision that you made. And if you don't fundamentally understand how that algorithm made the decision, what factors went into making that decision, and how the technology and the people influenced that outcome, you very much are opening the door to get sued. And if you've heard anything about the recent prosecution of Workday, you know that if a company of that size and scale is having issues, there's a very good chance something's going to hit your door soon enough. What's happening with that case, I am not a lawyer, yada, yada, all the things you have to say to make sure that you don't take this as word. But long story short is that they are being charged as a recruiter. That technology is being seen as a recruiter that made a hiring decision. So you need to think twice before you let that machine start to push you through decision making and to have a role in the decisions you make. That's why the human matters more than anything. And you can't just turn a blind eye to technology and pretend it doesn't exist or that it's just part of the process. You need to know how it works behind the scenes. Now, knowing how it works behind the scenes is kind of one chapter of this, but we also need to understand that the influence of AI on people means that it is harder than ever to get and keep their attention, right? Last night, I was at an event talking to a friend, and he shared a statistic with me that kind of blew my mind. And it's the fact that from the beginning of the print press until 2022, a lot of content was created, okay? Like beyond, I don't even know the number, like millions. In the year 2022, AI created more content than that entire period of time. So if you think that you're gonna stand out by doing the same stuff that you have always done, let me correct that assumption. There's no way. And there are 3 reasons that I think attention is becoming harder and harder to grasp, especially when it comes to this big decision and deciding to change a job. The first is that the average person sees over 3,000 messages a day, and honestly, I think I'm being conservative with that number. Think about it. You're scrolling your Instagram, you're checking your email. You walk through that expo hall, you just doubled your number. It's a lot of signage. Very overwhelming, right? But when people are seeing that volume of message, do you know how easy it is to tune out something generic? To tune out a template? To ignore your, "we have an incredible opportunity for you" email. No one cares. Getting their attention is extra challenging. Here's the other factor. This is where I could also make fun of Gen Z, but I'm not going to. And it's that our attention spans are shrinking rapidly. I refer to it as the toilet theory of attention span, and that's why there's a giant toilet on the screen right now. And the toilet theory of attention span, very professional, very significant, states the following. The average person's attention span is about as long as they sit on the toilet for a number 1. It's kind of gross, but you won't forget it. And frankly, based on my nieces and the children I know, that is just, these sessions are going to get real short soon, right? Because their attention spans are just shrinking and shrinking because the media is constantly changing to adapt to that attention span. So we're going from a video that's a minute long to a minute 45 seconds to 30 to 15 seconds. And our messages have to be more concise, they have to be more clear. And so when we're writing, we're having to say things that we used to say in 1,200 words in like 200 words. That's about what people can read beginning to end without tuning you out. 200 words. That's the length of the average social media message. Something they choose to read beginning to end. I'm confident that your benefits manual is not anywhere near 200 words. A couple of people are just like, oh, that one hurt. All right? And the last reason is because everything changed. Think about the last 5 years. If you predicted what would happen over the last 5 years ago, you're in the wrong industry. You should be in reading some cards, doing some tarot, some fortune telling, some kind of predictions, because if you had told me 5 years ago today what would have happened over the last 5 years, I would have thought you were crazy. And it's not so much that everything changed, but it's the consequence on humans when they feel unsure and uncertain. So don't worry if you didn't bring your glasses today, you don't have to read the chart. What the chart says is this is why people consider changing jobs. And what I find so interesting about this chart is not the big parts, okay? The big stuff is duh. Of course people left their job because they wanted to make more money. Oh, thank you for that intelligent insight, Kat. Really appreciate you being here today, right? They want better work-life balance. Yeah. Everybody says that. What's interesting to me is the bottom, because these are all the things no one would say out loud 5 years ago. If you've been in this industry for a while, you know people were not admitting that they thought the company values didn't align with theirs, or that they lacked strong relationships with their peers, or that they wanted to leave for a better culture. When people change, the way they make decisions changed, right? When everything feels unsteady around you, we're not making decisions the same way we always have. And that means something has to change about the way we've done things up until this point. And I think we have this incredible opportunity of bringing AI to the table to be able to infuse technology. But the reality is that when people are feeling more human about that decision, when they're actually changing the way they make decisions, we need a combination of the two. It's what they call a human in the loop. That's you. Right? And I think that's where we get stuck. Because if you've read those articles beyond the salacious headlines about stealing your job, they don't talk about you and the machine. They don't give you ideas for how you blend these priorities. They just tell you the machine's coming for your job, and that's not exactly motivation to go and invest in the future. That's motivation in figuring out your 401k plan, right? And your exit strategy. And we avoid the technology because there's that fear. I want to dispel the fears. And so instead of bringing you some forward-thinking, big ideas about the future of recruiting, right? I totally could do that. I have some. I blog about that every Tuesday. If that's what you're into, I'm so sorry. That's not what we're going to do today. Instead, I wanted to contextualize this with what recruiters actually want to automate. So I found a research study of the top 4 things that recruiters want to use AI for. And what we're going to do for each of these things is to dive into what we know about this, kind of why you think you should be automating it in the first place. We're going to talk about the opportunity. I promise you'll get an AI solution for every single one of these problems. But what I'm going to do that I don't think you've seen at these presentations today is tell you how to be really great in this process. How to add humanity into this. How to make sure that you are still the most valuable thing because you are. Remember, we are humans influencing humans to make life-altering decisions. We need you in the process, okay? So we're going to get very tactical, very practical. Get your pens out. I'm going to get you a copy of the slides. You too on the line here. Everybody at home, and I'm going to provide a free resource at the end. All right? Let's jump into the first one. So, when I say searching across platforms, what I mean by that is sourcing. How do we go out and make a list of 50 options, right? Where do we get contact information? And prior to starting my own company, I was actually a managing editor at a blog about recruiting. And I gotta tell you, we did at least one webinar every single month about this, about technology and tools and sourcing, and by far, it was the most attended sessions we did every single month. I'm talking like double the amount of people. And I think it's because we had this perception that that's like, I don't want to say it's for the nerds, but it's like, it's super technical, right? Like, if I start talking about Boolean searches and X-ray da-da-das, right? Like, you know the types of people I'm talking about. And so we kind of like separated ourselves, like, that's not my thing. Find the person whose thing it is and bring them to me, like, great. And this is an excellent opportunity to use AI because it is highly technical and it kind of makes all of those things that were very complicated before very, very easy. This is just one example of technology that does this. There are tons of tools at many different price points, across many different industries and specialties that do it. But basically what it does is it's almost like a mini Google search, but for candidates, where you can be like, I want to see doctors in Montana that live within 50 miles of where I am right now and have this specialty. And it's like, here's your 15 people, go. And it gives you all the contact information you need, and that is awesome. The thing I need you to push back on, so you're not creating liability for yourself, is asking these vendors, where does your tool search? Because all of them tout, like, we search 1,200 databases. Okay, what about the other 30,000 million bajillion databases that exist in this world? As much as they try to say that they have access to every corner of the internet, they don't. There is some limit to that, and you need to know where the limit lies. Because often we create exclusion unintentionally by only searching the pond that we are given. And where many of these technologies try to differentiate themselves is that now they're adding email automation on top. And I get why they're doing that, because that's by far, I think, candidates' #1 complaint about HR and recruiting, is that you don't respond, you ghost them. Anybody read an article about that, ghosting? Yeah. You're laughing because we all have that secret feeling of like, and I've been on the other side of it, thank you very much, right? And so what they're doing is they're creating automation to hit all of these big key moments through the process, right? So it's automating the first response, it's automating the follow-up interview, and so you can just kind of click a button and all of the people who have made it to that part of the funnel, send them all an email. But even with that empowerment of being able to send an email to someone at a really specific time, when I sit down with our clients and we audit those emails and we start to look at them, no one customizes the email, right? They all say the exact same thing as every other person who bought that software. And we are not going to stand out by saying the exact same stuff that everybody else is saying. You're just not. And the pushback I get, well, if I sit there and write an email to everybody, why did I pay for this in the first place? You just like stole all of my time savings. I have to write an email that's one by one to each of them. No. There are ways to templatize and customize into what we call small batch automation, meaning it's still an automated email, but it's all people who have similar circumstances or situations. And you're gonna use this format for those emails. This works for every single automated email, okay? Every single automation that you write should include every single one of these pieces because it makes it personal, it makes it something that people understand, and bonus, you don't have to sit there and click send on every single custom email. You're welcome. Let's go line by line. The first is what I call the sentence. The sentence is the one thing that all of those people have in common. You had an interview last week. This is not a creativity contest, okay? Like if you've been in this industry long enough, you remember the sourcing days. I got a couple smiles. You remember the sourcing days where they were like, go find their dog and send a picture of their dog to them and customize the subject line to say like, hello to Lyric. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Situationally, what do all of these people have in common? It's been very rainy in Chicago, right? Because all of those people sit in Chicago. Think of it that way. It's more generic, but it's still custom. The next thing is the timeline and the pitch. All right, so what just happened? Here's what's happening next. Because the issue with the ghosting is not that you didn't say anything, because you can actually say a lot without saying anything at all. It's that you don't actually set expectations. And so by timeline and pitch, what I mean is you completed an interview last week, and this week we're reviewing those conversations and making some decisions about who's moving forward. The next is the manager and success. Okay, what happens if you make it through this step into the next one? Create progression. If you move through this interview step, we'll be following up to book another call with the manager so-and-so. The manager's not mandatory, but the success is, okay? And the last one is the thing that is missing from 99.9% of your emails, and it will literally erase the effectiveness of every other step that I'm talking about here, okay? And it is the call to action. There are two types of calls to action. The first is direct. You need to go book this session. You need to go book this interview. Click here to do this right now. Fill out this paperwork, okay? That's a direct call to action. The transactional is the human part. If you need to talk to a human, email this email box, call this number, okay? You literally just need to tell them how to get a human. Who here has ever gotten really pissed at the chat bot because it won't just let you talk to the representative? You don't understand what I'm saying, and I need to talk to a person because I have 22 minutes between these meetings and we are not getting there, right? That's what I mean by transactional. Always tell them how to find the human. Next, let's talk about screening candidates. So this is kind of the next part of the funnel where we take it from 50 to 5, okay? And I actually think this is where we have the most significant opportunity with AI, and if you're ignoring this one or you're kind of like feeling the slog of being here since 7 a.m., wake up, listen, okay? Because all of us are dealing with the consequences of AI automation in which you post a job and then all of a sudden you have 1,000 unqualified people, right? And that is a pain. And if you think you're saving time with AI, we are sorely mistaken because what we did was just make ourselves more work. Because what's happening is that we are generating generic job postings. Job seekers are taught to customize their resume to your generic job posting. And now, we have just created a mirror of misinformation. And then you send your junior recruiter in there to tell me which one's the best. Right, you're laughing because you're like, and God bless them. Good luck, right? They're spinning their wheels, and that's how we end up spending a lot of time interviewing people who are not qualified to work. Now, you can still use AI. I strongly recommend it, but where you need to start is on your high volume, low retention roles. Meaning you hire more than 25 of these people every year, and you are constantly opening that role, backfilling, because people quit all the time. Because what I love about that is you actually have a data set to help you understand why people quit. And you can start to implement screening questions that target those reasons why people quit. So it's like everybody quits because they don't know they have to work nights and weekends. So then you're gonna put a screening question right after that submit button that says, can you work nights and weekends? And if they say no, auto reject. Okay? That is AI, it can be that simple. But there's an ethical consideration that honestly I was completely unaware of until I joined an ethics board for AI in HR. And every single week I sat around with some of the smartest people I have ever met in my life, and we talked through the ethical considerations of different rejections. So the example I want to use is actually for nurses, because there is obviously an enormous shortage and a lot of demand for nursing. And so they sat us down and they said, okay, well, we're going to make a screening question. If you don't live within 10 miles of the hospital, we're going to push you on to someone else, because a lot of people are quitting because the extra commute and the schedules is just a lot for them. And I was like, okay, cool. That makes sense, right? Like, of course, if commute is an issue and we're going outside of the 10 miles and you know that people outside of 10 miles quit within the first 30 days, that seems like a natural answer, an easy solution. And then they showed us a map with the demographics of different communities. And they drew the circle around 10 miles. And wouldn't you know, all the people within those, 90% of people within that 10-mile radius all look the same, talk the same. And the second you got to 11 miles is where all of the diverse talent that they really wanted in their pipeline, that's where they lived. They were saying they wanted an equitable, diverse, inclusive pipeline, but they were literally using AI to create walls that didn't necessarily exist before. We unintentionally create barriers when we just kind of click and fuss through this. AI isn't quite ready to do this same level of screening and rejection on roles that you only hire every once in a while. Because ultimately, a lot of the screening and rejections that we do kick out really smart people based off of things that don't actually qualify them. So years of experience. So years of experience will quantify time. It'll tell you how long someone did a job, but it doesn't qualify people. Because even if you and the person next to you had the exact same job title, you would not assume that you do the exact same work every single day or that you've had the same experiences in your career. So why would we disqualify someone who has 3 years instead of 2? When we have no context about what was completed during that time. It's also inherently ageist. When you say 1 year of experience, you expect some baby to show up. And when you say 20 years of experience, you expect someone older. That expectation is a code for bias. College degrees. College is a privilege, not a right in this country. You are very lucky if you had the chance to go to college, and I say that as someone who was completely blessed. And the reality is that college is not a direct pipeline to most careers. You don't learn how to do your job in school. Okay, so for that one person who loves to challenge me on this, I want my doctor to have a degree, I want my lawyer to have a degree, I want my accountant to have a degree, and I want my engineer to have a degree so the side of the road does not fall down the mountain. Okay? I do not care if my VP of HR, who's already worked in this industry for 15 years, has a degree. I do not care if my marketing manager has a degree. I have a marketing degree. I learned how to make billboards. Guess how many billboards I've made? Okay? College is a privilege, not a right. If you use it as an auto-reject, what you're saying is, I only want people who are privileged to work in my company. And you gotta push back. Skills. Skills are not a universal language. Collaborative to you and collaborative to me mean totally different things. Ask my team. Collaborative might mean something for us, that means asynchronous work. It means respond to me within 48 hours. That's what our collaboration looks like. And when we start to use skills-based hiring and reject people based on their alignment with some mystery definition of a keyword, again, we are infusing bias, not validity. And the last one, who here has ever had a manager say, well, I just want someone from a competitor so they understand our industry? Yep, that's biased too. You are cutting the field by doing that. The way that we become the human in the loop, and this is actually a new training that I'm offering, is teaching people how to have hard conversations with managers. Because the reality is that I can train you all day, and if your managers say no and you go, okay, doesn't matter. You are highly educated and the outcomes are the same. One of the most significant tactics that you learn during a training like that is how to ask better questions. And one of those techniques is asking questions that create contrast. Questions that create contrast are when someone is really stuck on an idea, like, no, I have to have 10 years of experience. I don't want anybody with 9. You better get them out of my face, right? Or I must have a college degree. You're gonna create contrast to that knowledge. Okay, well, what does someone with 10 years of experience know that someone with 9 doesn't know? What did someone with a degree learn that someone without the degree doesn't know? And please do not let them tell you about soft skills. Responsibility. What? I know a bunch of single mothers who are incredibly responsible human beings and never went to college. You can learn a lot of soft skills without ever gaining that kind of debt. All right. This one surprised me because the data shows that 70% of candidates will leave a process if they think there's a robot on the other side. The other reason why this one came up and why I was kind of confused by it is the fact that, you know, it's not most people's job to be good at sitting in front of a computer and talking to no one. I don't know that that's anyone's job. It's to be able to answer questions on demand, like maybe your sales team. But most people get to talk to another human being to show that they're good at their job. And that interaction is fundamental. The other issue is that people are getting sued for this right now. It's for allowing a video screen, a video interview that's asynchronous, meaning it happens without another person on the line, for letting that asynchronous interview make the decision. And that doesn't mean that you can't use AI. It means that you need to be smarter about that choice. It means we can use AI for interview questions and generating a list. And notice I did not say, please give me 12 interview questions. We were actually just talking about this one, right? It means being really specific. Write me interview questions based on this job posting. That means your job posting has to be right. These questions should help me assess what. So this is a framework, not a script, okay? Based on what? Interview questions based on something that contextualizes the job. Questions should help you assess what. This is the next part. This is the human, because the machine will never tell you, that's illegal. You probably shouldn't do that, right? Because remember, it's an aggregate of things that are true and untrue. Is you're gonna ask the machine, so ChatGPT, Claude, any of those tools, are these legal? What bias do these questions have? I love that question, because it'll tell you. It'll tell you if you ask, this is ageist, this is, oh yeah, it'll be very explicit about the bias. It'll tell you straight up, these are not good questions to ask, but it'll still give you the questions, and if you ask no follow-up, you again are creating liability. Here's the other one I really, really love. Please take a picture of this slide. Because you can use AI to really create an advantage by preparing candidates for interviews. All right, so ask them to give options for accommodations. Okay, I love this because I don't know a lot about accommodations. This is not my specialty. But a friend of mine who is a specialist in it was like, you should actually just tell people what the accommodations are. Don't ask them if they need accommodations. That's accessible. That's inclusive, is when you say these are the accommodations that are available, and you just give them a document, and then they can pick if they need something. Communicate the details. You can say, like, give me a template for an interview preparation guide that communicates all the details a candidate would need to know. And it will literally give you a framework, and then you can add and remove things. It's about checking in regularly. Okay, give me a series of 5 emails that I can use to check in with a candidate who I haven't responded to. It'll literally just spit out these templates for you. It's not a creativity contest. The fact that you send it is an advantage. Last one, create a landing page with sample interview questions. Then you can use a simple tool or work with your technology team to create something on your career site that actually prepares people to be successful. Because you know what? It's not a gauntlet. We're not sending people to the Olympics to see who the best in America is. We are trying to fill this job faster, right? We're trying to get the right person. Prepare them in the ways that you are capable of. And the last one we're going to cover before we get to our Q&A session is writing job descriptions. This is my specialty. I try not to nerd out too hard on you, but I have literally spent the last 5 years researching and understanding how job postings are reflections of historical bias. Like, I've literally gone decade by decade and put side by side headlines in the newspaper and shifts inside of job postings that show that they are literally reflections of the bias being built inside of companies. And this is also the thing that people just love to use AI for. I will not ask you to raise your hands to know who's written a job posting with AI, because I know you've all done it, because I have literally traveled the world and asked rooms bigger than this one to raise their hand if they know how to write a job posting. And not one hand has gone up. And when the hand has gone up, I've been like, do I know you? And they're like, yeah. Because I was the only expert 5 years ago. I'm still one of the only people who specialize in this. And you know what that means? Is that AI can't do it well. It can create something generic for you. Who here has read 50 great job postings? For those of you on the camera, there's not one hand up behind you. I'm not raising my hand because I have never gone to a company and read 50 great job postings, not one. And it's because we were never taught how to write job postings. And that means that AI can't write it for you because there's no good examples. And I can prove it. Yeah, I can tell all of you can read, thank you. So what you're looking at on the screen is proof that most AI tools are trash in, trash out. I usually use more explicit language, but when in good company. They are junk in, junk out systems, because you know what those tools can't do is tell you if it's any good, because good doesn't mean sounds better. Good doesn't mean I swapped out some vocabulary keywords. Good means I told the truth. I accurately defined the role so the right person could read it and say, yes, I want to, yes, I can, or no, I don't want to, no, I definitely can't do this job. And we know that job titles are not universal. At one place, an HR director does one thing, and at another, the exact same title with a completely different role. You think AI can navigate that nuance? They can't. The even scarier part is that when you look into the research, 56% of people think that AI can remove bias. No. No, 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 no. Because for the last 100 years, everything has been biased. There's nothing that isn't biased, and I can show you proof. So again, if you didn't bring your glasses, I got you, right? So they asked the AI to write a job posting for someone who went to Howard. Then it asked them to write a job posting for someone who went to Harvard. Can we all agree that the job posting should be the same no matter where you went to college? Duh, right? Tell me why they were wildly different. It is. One is a HBCU, and one is an Ivy League, and this machine showcases all the bias that exists in this country, in which for Howard University, the historically black college, it mentions diversity 100%, and for some reason at Harvard, they don't care about diversity. I'm not going to say the loud part. You know it. You know it. These tools are showing the biases that exist in our country. And all it's doing is accelerating that bias. So if you think it's removing bias, let me correct you. There's no way. Because hiring managers are biased. What this should actually say is every single person is biased. That is not our fault. We grow up in a society that embeds these ideas subtly and in very loud ways. But your responsibility as an HR professional is to understand these biases, to challenge them, and know how to do better. That's why you need to train your team on what good means. And frankly, if you don't know how to write a job posting, if you don't know how to accurately lead a hiring manager intake and get the truth out of a manager, your AI aspirations are going to hell. Because if you don't accurately define the role, if you can't write a series of requirements that are accurate to this job, how are you going to calculate salary correctly? How can you automate, like value of that person according to whatever tool that's selling up in the expo hall? How are you going to automatically assign training through a learning and development platform? I can keep going. If you do not accurately define roles, you're not going anywhere with AI. You can skip the rest of the AI sessions. All right? Because you don't have the initial data correct. And if the first data point is wrong, everything else is too, and you're putting your people at a disadvantage. One of the techniques that every single person who works in HR and recruiting must know how to do is define requirements. Meaning, you align, whenever you write a job posting, the mandatory requirements must directly assign to an everyday task, and if they do not directly align, one-to-one, there's a dotted line from, you must know how to do this so you can do this, it needs to be erased. You have added bias. And the language I want you to use is human language. You know how to. It's not 2 years experience in an industrial environment where you worked on piping and blah, 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 and no, you know how to connect these kinds of machines. You've worked in an environment where you learned how to fill in the blank. You feel confident standing in front of people and leading a conversation. That's not strong communication skills, right? Be explicit. Every single one should be a yes or no question. And please read everything twice. See? That was perfect timing. I owe you a drink, for real. Because we are all one F away from, you can see it, all right? And the machine can't tell you when you spelled a word right, just it's the wrong word. And yes, this is real. These are the results you want. These are the results of being more human. All right? Yes, you're going to get a copy of these slides, but even more, I've brought some more resources, so stay here. 1 more minute, I got you, okay? But before we wrap up, I hope we can be real friends. I am the only Katrina Kibben in the world, so if you spell my name right, you'll find me. If you spell my name wrong, you will find a priest for the U.S. House of Representatives, and you know you'll be in the wrong place, because I am too gay for that job. Thank you for laughing before I told you to. I always get like an uncomfortable stare, like, can I laugh? All right? If you want to learn more from me, I'm posting on LinkedIn all the time. Let's Be Professional Connections. If you prefer to learn by video, I post short videos every week. And if you're interested in my van life and my personal life, we can connect on Instagram and you can see all the beautiful places I've been. I wrote a book about it called This Was All an Accident, and you can buy a copy of that on Amazon. If you enjoyed my style today, I think you'll love that book. And as promised, pick up your phones, point them at the screen right now. Those of you at home, pick up your phone and point it at the screen too. What this is an inclusive candidate experience webinar plus workbook. If you love these ideas, I brought 12 of my smartest friends together, and we all shared our best ideas for using technology and our brains to create more inclusive experiences. You'll get a copy of the book, and you'll also be able to watch a 1-hour webinar where you can learn from all of those people in real time. And now we have about 5 minutes left to take any of your questions. But first, I just want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you so much. I know, you're just waiting for Kelly Clarkson. Hold on 1 second, let's make sure you get the mic, because for the people that are on the computer.
So you mentioned, I believe, not using AI to write like a job posting or a job description. So what do you recommend that we use AI for?
You can, for the job posting specifically?
Yes, did I understand you correctly?
So the reality is that you're going to get something generic when it comes from the job posting. So specifically, if you want to use AI, use it for job title research to make sure that your job actually gets found, right? Use it to make your job more concise. And you can literally just plug it in and say, make this shorter, right? But I think the big thing is a lot of people think they can use something generic and get better results. And the reality is that I want to see you use something really specific and start there so that it's actually accurate to the role. Because most tools just make it sound better. It doesn't actually make it better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I really learned a lot. My question is regarding qualified applicants. So that was something that you mentioned, wanting more of. I've been to sessions here where it's like volume of applicants, like how to get more. That's not our issue at my company. We get plenty of applicants. It's just not necessarily the people we're looking for. So could you talk a little bit about that? I'm sure part of that's job posting, but anything else you've learned in your work of how to get more qualified applicants?
100%. So I think we all know that's usually one of my tests to know if I would like to listen to a session beginning to end. Because if you've ever worked in recruiting long enough, you know that more is not more. More is more work, right? You don't want more. You want more qualified people. I'll take 15 qualified people over 1,500 applicants any day. Any day. So if I'm really looking for qualified applicants, I'm going to kind of do an analysis of what I'm getting already and try to see if there's any trends. Okay, well, a lot of these people clearly misunderstood the schedule because they're all saying that they can't work weekends, and this very explicitly says that they can't. So you might add those screening questions there that do a little bit of real-time rejection. So you can say, like, this is one of the criteria for this work. No, right? The next piece, I think, is starting to go and fish in different waters, right? So wherever your job posting is posted right now, go post it somewhere else. See if maybe it's a consequence of the job board that you're using, because I'm convinced ZipRecruiter is actually trying to kill some of all of you with that one-click apply, right? Like, that feature, that was not made by anybody who works in recruiting. No offense if they're on here, but you know what I mean? Right? Go fish somewhere else that doesn't have those kind of quick apply things that are causing you that consequence in the first place. And I think the other piece is it's getting really good at the job post. Being very explicit, like if you do not meet the following criteria, you are not qualified for this role. And making it so obvious that a teenager could read it and understand it. The example I always like to use is like, it's not clear enough unless you could walk up to a stranger on the street, hand it to them, and they can tell you what that person does. You have not reached the appropriate level of clarity, and that can be helpful, but the reality, I think, is like, that one-click apply, we're gonna get volume. It's a matter of, again, telling those technology companies, I don't want that. Reject the resource, all right? You're allowed to say no to AI too. Any other questions before we wrap up? Got 1 minute. Sorry, man. You're getting your full exercise on this one.
I need the stats. So this goes back to the qualified applicants. And sometimes I'm thinking that really qualified job seekers get frustrated because of the need to, in their perception, redefine every resume they submit to adjust it to the keywords so that they can, in an expedited manner, get through to at least the first interview.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if there's going to be, in the foreseeable future, where there's going to be some flexibility whereby AI can adjust or to not we as the recruiting teams designing the job postings based around our needs, but that there's an expansive way to adapt to the job skills of what's out there in, the portfolio of people. Let's just use marketers.
Yeah.
And that adjustment is made, it's manipulated in the artificial intelligence world to accommodate people so that they're not needing to redefine or rewrite every single resume through Teal or JobScan or the artificial tools that are being used. There's a lot of really great talent out there that's just worn out.
I really hope we get there because right now I think there's a bit of fatigue on both sides, right? The recruiters are really tired of reading all of these resumes that aren't in their language, that don't quite match. And then on the other side, we have these job seekers who are really tired of creating 18 versions of their resume a day. But we're a far way off from technology being able to understand and comprehend versus just making that keyword match. I think we're still a long way away, unfortunately, and that's where screening questions and building in some automation on the next step to say it very explicitly, like, have you done this before? Have you been here? Have you worked at someone in this industry? Things like that can start to help sort the pile more quickly for you, but right now that matching technology just doesn't exist. All right, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kat. Please remember to complete the session survey on the app or the virtual platform as we value your feedback. Enjoy the rest of the conference, which means Kelly Clarkson. Tonight I heard that the line is already starting. The doors open at 6:30, and there is book signing happening up in the Sherm store. Enjoy.